Welcome to the Masculinity Unmasked podcast with hosts Greg Styan, Max Wilson, and Linda Tilson.
Okay, hello and welcome everyone to season 2 of the Masculinity Unmasked podcast, the fortnightly conversation which delves deep into the issues impacting men today. We're here to have the conversations you might not be having elsewhere. Honest, open, sometimes uncomfortable, but always important. In this very first episode of season 2, I'm joined by two amazing co-hosts, fellow coach Greg Styan. Hi, Greg.
Hey, guys.
He's currently traveling the world, and we'll come on to that in a moment. And Linda Tilson, who is a behavioral strategist, relationship consultant, and a passionate advocate for high-performing men. Hi, Linda.
Hey, guys.
So together, the three of us are going to be co-hosting the podcast this season, and we're going to be delving into our vision for what that entails today. We're going to hear a little bit about Greg's journey abroad, or his anticipated journey abroad. He's currently in Spain, but he's going to be doing some traveling, and the exciting guests that he might meet, and talking to Linda about the reasons why we wanted to bring her on board and why she wanted to come on board. So, Greg and Linda, thank you both so much for being here today. It's great to see you both. And I think we'll start with you, Linda. So we've had you on as a guest to the podcast before. So people, if they've listened to that episode, will know a little bit about you. But perhaps it's useful just to start by sharing a little bit about the work that you do in the men's space and why you felt it was important to have a female voice in this men's space.
Absolutely. So much of my work has been about coming alongside men in the moments where they feel unseen, unheard, or boxed by expectations. So in my work, I've seen firsthand how powerful it is when men are given that safe space, that non-judgmental space to actually be real and allow that mask that they typically put on, that armor, to come off. And, really why I'm drawn to this work is because I see how bringing a female perspective is really about not taking over a conversation. It's about bringing balance to it. And while men and women experience the world differently, what we can do when we come together as men and women, we can have more of an understanding, and we can dispel some of the myths, some of the societal expectations to say whether they're true or untrue, and just really about coming together for that human experience and doing it in a way that both sexes really benefit.
Yeah, I think it's a huge missing piece of the puzzle, isn't it? I mean, there's lots of men's podcasts out there. There's lots of men's spaces, and they're all absolutely needed. But what is sometimes missing is the female perspective, and even for women to listen to this podcast as well, and to be able to share some of the perspectives that you may share, looking at it through that lens, I think is going to be incredibly important. And that's what we're looking for, isn't it? It's like, say, bringing the balance. It's bringing that harmony, into the conversations that we're having already in our homes, in our houses, but also here on the podcast as well. Yeah, and it was actually you, Greg, wasn't it? You had a listener who contacted you and said what might be interesting as well is to have more of a female perspective in some of the issues that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Actually, it brings me on to like a thought process, of continued improvement in where we started the podcast to where it is now. If you think back to those, when we wanted to make a change, we wanted to give, guys an opportunity to be heard, to have those awkward chats that maybe, you can't have with friends or family. And we started off on those X spaces, didn't we? All that time ago, when we didn't really know what we were doing. And we built it up, changed it, had some amazing guests on, changed it to video. And then it comes to that reflection time, doesn't it? We always try to make it bigger and better. We always try to improve as it went on. And then it comes to those hard discussions, what would make it better? What would make it more of a rounded show? And I think that a piece of advice of bringing on, a female perspective is interesting. And one of the things I actually said to you guys was actually when you look into coaching, lots of guys feel more comfortable speaking to women. There's part of that as well, isn't there? Is making it maybe even a greater safe space, if you like, isn't it, for our listeners?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Yeah, it's great to have you on board, Linda. And Greg and I have both personally been interviewed by Linda on a show that she was part of, or is part of still, I believe. And that was really powerful to be sort of in the seat as a guest on that show and being interviewed about sort of some of my challenges as a man. I know, Greg, you had the same experience. You bring a lot to the table, Linda, and I'm really excited to hear some of the interviews that you're gonna have with people in this space. And of course, we're all based across different parts of the world now. So, Greg, you're traveling. You're currently in Spain still. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in Spain for 6 weeks, and then off to Bali for 2 months, Vietnam, then Thailand for 2 months, and Vietnam for 3 months, where I try and work out where me and my wife are going to end up next. But I feel the best part of that travel is some of the amazing creative people that I'm gonna meet. One of my favorite parts of this show, Max, has been some of the guests. I feel like the guests make it, and they're all so different. I love that unscripted nature of it, where that's where the greatness comes from for me, is where it's free flowing, where it's natural. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. I mean, I even had the most wildest discussion with a taxi driver this week, who did 10 years undercover as a policeman. All the way through this 1 hour discussion with him, I was thinking, you'd make a great guest. And that's what this is about, isn't it? Actually, is having some of those deep discussions, with some amazing characters, to hopefully pass on some wisdom, to other guys, or where other men can resonate with, with their issues.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if we look where we ended up with our topics last time, I mean, there's definitely conversations that you don't tend to have down the pub or wherever you go to meet your mates, but they're all really important conversations, right? And that's, I think, what we want to expand on with this season is how can we have more of those conversations with as many interesting people in space as possible, and start to normalize some of these conversations as well, right? So, Linda, your vision for season 2, then, what do you have in mind in terms of what you would like to achieve through these guest interviews and being in this space? I'd love to hear.
Yes, what I'd like for all of us to achieve in this season is really about bringing women into the conversation, because I think that that's been the missing ingredient. Because if you think about it, men's well-being is very much impacted by family structures, relationships, workplace dealings in communities. And so, women are stakeholders too, right? And so they want the best for the men in their life. I have a husband, I have 2 sons, a daughter as well. And, that's a driver just right there. And so it makes total sense that we would have women be a part of the conversations, because really it's the voice, as Greg has put it, is that's the missing pieces, that voice of the women's perspective. And to be able to unpack those deeper conversations, it's a needed ingredient.
Yeah. And I should say the plan is for the listeners, so the plan is for us all to individually interview different guests, and then we'll come together collectively throughout the season as well. But we'll be individually interviewing guests. So it'll be slightly different, a different take on what we were doing on the first season as well. So it should make for some interesting listening, not only in terms of the guests that we have, but also that setup as well. So yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I have some interesting people in mind to talk to. And, yeah, I guess, Greg, you're going to be traveling. Where are you going? Bali?
And interestingly, when you go to Canggu and all these places, they have podcast meets, entrepreneurial swaps, if you like. And I'm looking forward to taking it on the road. Of taking what we talked about, the honesty, the great parts of it, and passing that on. Actually, one of the best things, or most interesting aspects I found going into season 2, is if you think about how we got people to come on the show in the first place. Yeah, you almost thought they were a good fit. Obviously, what happened was it goes out, and then people start to apply. They start to reach out to you about coming on, and I guess, and that's part of our biggest process now, isn't it? Is actually who's going to be the best guest, who can give some real value. We're not looking for people that sell themselves, are they? We're looking for people that can really help our listeners. And I think that's maybe our biggest challenge now, is actually, isn't it, is keeping it grounded, keeping it with those values that we've created. But we're also going to have a little deep dive into ourselves, aren't we? We're going to have sort of like a deeper session, with each other. And I think that's going to be great as well.
Yeah. Definitely. Keeping it authentic, raw, honest, I think is really important. Based on, the first season and where we got to with that, that's what we want to continue. Linda, from your experience of sort of working in the men's space, then what are some important issues that you've seen come up time and time again there in the interviews that you've.
Yes, really, the number one issue that I see is being able to put yourself in a place where you might be sitting at rock bottom, or you might be starting up an entrepreneurial enterprise, to be able to voice those needs, to voice those concerns. And because, I've sat with many men, and the first thing they'll say is, please don't laugh at this. I'm going to tell you something that's really hard for me. I don't know how to articulate this because it's really hurting and tugging at me. Or I don't know who to turn to. There's a lot of being able to say those things and really truly feel like you're not being judged. That's the number one thing, whether it's being at the point where you need some help because you're really, challenging, have some challenging issues, or if you're building something and you haven't done it before. And so really I was thinking about an analogy today that I could share about how I fit in with a female perspective. And really, if you think about a parent and a child, and they're walking along a busy roadway. And so you automatically will put the child to the inside so that the parent is on the outside to be that guardrail. And so really, I feel like in the men's space, I am that guardrail. I will stand on the outside. I will make it safe for the travel to happen. And the travel in my mind is those deeper conversations, those really hard ones. And if there's something difficult to do, whether it's navigating a breakup, a relationship in the workplace, navigating a skill you haven't done before and just feeling like you should have it and know how to do it. It could be a crisis situation, any of those things. And so that's really, being that guardrail is important. If without the guardrail, we might not be able to open up as easily. And so that's the role that I often play.
I think that's a really good point. Linda, I think another really important aspect that you'll be able to help us cover is I love data, by the way. I love analytics. And on our Spotify list, it's really interesting to see where our listeners come from. You would automatically think that me and Max coming from the UK, that it's got a UK audience. It doesn't. It has a worldwide audience, So that's really interesting. Obviously, you're on the other side of the pond. We might speak the same language, but we've got slight differentials, if you like, haven't we? Right? But one thing that's going on in the UK at the moment is there's a real upheaval, if that makes sense, a real change in society. Me and Max have never dived into politics, and I don't think we should start now, by the way, in terms of going into. But I know those issues are mirrored across the pond as well, aren't they? That those problems. So
Absolutely.
I think that also goes to show that this is a universal show. We're here to talk about not just like the problems that are going on in the UK, but actually that this going across the whole world. These. And one thing I've been quite, trying to stress, not just to the people on the show, and I know I've said this to some of our guests as well, Max, and even my clients, we live in a world where there seems to be a real negative spin on everything. The press, it all seems to be that the worst is happening all the time. I'm not so sure. I also think in this space, there's a lot of great stuff going on. I think there's a lot of spaces, a lot of great role models, a lot of amazing characters. And I also feel like that's a great aspect of this show, isn't it? Is some of the people we speak to are amazing, by the way, in a world of doom and gloom. Maybe it's not. I feel that spaces like this, some of the characters we got on, the experiences that they've had, it goes to show that there is light at the end of the tunnel, I think, with this. I do think that we are going to get through this period of hardship, if you like, or whatever, however you want to call it. And Linda, I think you'll be a really important aspect in us completing that puzzle, if you like, if that makes sense. I think that you'll breathe some fresh air into it, and you'll rejuvenate certain aspects and help us cover parts that maybe me and Max can't cover, if that makes sense. I think it'll make it more rounded. Do you agree with that, Linda? Do you think that's a good perspective? Do you think that these issues are mirrored across the pond?
Well, I believe so. I mean, that they're human experiences. And so, yes, we might all be in different lenses and have different backgrounds and experiences. But at the end of the day, it's a human experience. And, I like what you talked about, being the missing piece, that puzzle, being able to have a different lens, as we're having the conversations, because, I'm going to see things that may not be obvious at the surface, which is, why I wanted to be in the work in a mixed space like we are right now. So we're modeling what we're going to be talking about. And so we're not just, putting words to it. We're actually doing it amongst ourselves and the guests that we bring in.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Max, I hope you don't mind me being honest about something. I always used to think the most powerful parts of the show were vulnerability. And I remember some real moments when Max went to some quite deep places, even things of his personality, experiences he had that I didn't even I was unsure about, and we've come to be the best of friends during this. I feel like that's maybe its strongest part, if that makes sense, is the vulnerability, is mirroring it, is, us not projecting our problems or our issues onto others, but actually trying to show that vulnerability. And I think that's important in this space, isn't it? Is role models, showing that it's not all doom and gloom. And I feel that's probably what's going to be the best part of some of the guests that we're going to have on. We're looking for some exciting people, some amazing voices, aren't we? Have you thought anything more about that? Anything more about the sort of people that we're going to go for?
Yeah, I think we're all human, aren't we, with human experiences. So I think each of us leaning into and sharing where we feel comfortable to more on those experiences. I'm sure the listeners would benefit from that. One thing that we certainly haven't done is pedestal and say that, we haven't struggled with any of this stuff. We absolutely have. And I think it's really important that whilst we're doing the work that we do in the men's space, we've been on our own journeys and that will always be the case. So we can bring that to the table as well, that shared lived experience. And I think that's something that's really important to us, isn't it, for this podcast is it's not pedestaling, it's meeting people where they're at and having these conversations and saying, we've been where you are, we understand. So I think that's important. I've got a couple of people in mind already, yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting where it takes us, because we covered a lot of different areas in the first episode, but also open to it being really organic in terms of who comes our way, who applies, and yeah, just having those conversations that really matter, I think is what's important. So that could look like different things. And I think, like you're saying, Greg, having that sort of cultural difference is also interesting. So hearing the experience of men's issues in the US, for example, that there's going to be some differences, lots of commonality and lots of similarity, but like you say, the political, the macro does influence the micro, and so it'd be interesting to see from your interviews, Linda, how that impacts on that micro level, on that cultural perspective as well, and learning from each other in relation to that. So yeah. How about you both?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel it'll definitely give us much more of a rounded opportunity. I think one of the biggest problems I've had, Matt, so I know we spoke about this off air, is actually we've had a lot more people apply this time. I've had a lot more people reach out to me. It's working out who we think is going to be beneficial to our listeners, isn't it? If that makes sense. We don't want guests to come on and preach. We want them to come in and share their experiences and to help others. Like the guy I met in the taxi, the Uber driver I met the other day, I was, wow, what a story. Unbelievable. And the first thing I thought is, I'd love to know more about this. I'd love to talk more about how many people could learn from those experiences. And I guess that's the magic of it, isn't it? And Linda, I'm looking forward to getting to know you on a different level as well. I loved coming on your show. We had a fantastic discussion about change, didn't we? And how, the digital nomad era, and I think people were really looking for freedom, but it was a real deep dive that could have gone on and on and on. And I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to continuing those conversations as well. And you and Max have a great podcast, and so I'm just really excited to become a part of it. And you're right, with all these different experiences, walks of life, that Uber driver has a rich experience. We also, speak with people that might be athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs that are starting up a venture. There's all different types of men that we're going to interview. And the most exciting part is we get to do it from a lens wherever we are in the world. I mean, it's exciting just to be the nomads that we are in this space, and to hear those rich stories of lived experience and the things that the men have learned along the way. And in some cases, we may have some female guests that come on that also will talk about their experiences that led to, guiding a man on his journey, for example, because I could give you many stories all day. So, I know we don't have time today to dive deep into all of those stories, but I've got some very interesting ones that are just as exciting as meeting that Uber driver that you were just describing.
That's a really good point. One common theme I felt, Max, that was very much there, maybe from about the halfway point of the series to the end, was spiritual thing, an undercurrent, if you like, where something there and none of us can quite put our finger on it. We know that it's there, and I feel like I'm interested to see where that goes. I also felt that was a great topic of discussion when,
Yeah.
you know, we had Robert talking about ancient Egypt, and we had, you know, the
Talking
that's
about death and
amazing. Yeah, amazing. But it was all
yeah.
like a spiritual undercurrent, you know,
Yeah.
like something being there that none of us can quite put our finger on. Linda, I'd love to know about your perspective and your interest on that. But Max, some of that enlightened me and you. I felt I went away and did a lot of research and tried to find out more about.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I think we've learned so much from our guests, right? And that comes back to this pedestaling point. We are learning as much as our listeners, which is what's so great about this process. But yeah, I mean, the spirituality side. I mean, some listeners may be thinking, well, that's not for me, you know. But actually, all we're talking about is there being something greater than ourselves, and even just entertaining that idea in the first place. And again, that might not be for everybody, but it's interesting how much of a taboo that topic still is, and how much of a taboo other topics are, like death that we touched on, and all the other topics. So this is what I'm excited about having, is these conversations that are still taboo. We can't hear these conversations in the usual run-of-the-mill way that we might have down, you know, the pub with our friends and stuff. So that's what we want to provide, is a space to be having these talks, airing these topics, so people feel less alone and less isolated, and actually people realize that it's quite normal to be thinking about these things as well, wherever you are on that spectrum, whether that's, you know, no belief system whatsoever, and that's absolutely fine as well, or curious, for example. Yeah, and I imagine in Bali you're going to meet some interesting people there on that front, on the sort of more spiritual side, or involved in.
Absolutely.
This is
Position myself along all those real sort of digital nomad spots for a month at each one, you know, Canggu, Chiang Mai, Da Nang, hoping that I can come across some real fantastic people. And like what you said, you know, I feel like I learned probably more off them than they did from me. And that was part of the magic. And I hope that's what our listeners got as well, is, you know, all our guests were amazing, but some of the, you know, I was going to say rabbit hole, it's maybe not the right term, but some of the deep dives, you know, in such a short space of time was fantastic. And I can't wait to do more of those. And like I said, Linda, I'm looking forward to seeing you on a different level, if that makes sense, because I saw Max dive deep. And when he did, it was like, you know, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's like, wow, that's amazing. And that's, for me, what this is all about, is vulnerability, the deep dives, you know, that's such an amazing space.
yeah. Yeah, great. Well, do either of you have any final words then? Any of this stuff that we've talked about today, ahead of starting season 2?
I'm just excited that we get this opportunity to launch powerfully into season 2, and I'm really excited about one of the guests that I'm going to bring in, because I think that he's going to have a little bit of spirituality, a little bit of flow, and mindset shifting. And so I'm really excited to see where that's going to head.
Right. Can't wait to hear that one, Linda. How about you, Greg?
For me, like I said, I'm looking forward to taking it on the road. I'm looking forward to meeting some of these amazing characters. And I think that it's getting better and better. The longer it went on, the better it went. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where we can take it now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to learning off you both as well, in relation to the way that you interview people, and we can all learn from each other in that respect as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of learning, both in terms of our guests, from each other, and going to be a lot of exciting conversations. So I can't wait either. And it's just great to kick off a brand new season. So thanks everyone for listening. We hope that you found this conversation, which is the first of many, valuable. And if there are any topics that you'd like us to explore in future episodes, we are listening. So all of our contact details are in the show notes. So don't be shy. Do reach out, share ideas, themes. We'll definitely take that into consideration. But until then, that's it from us all for now. And yeah, we can't wait to start. So take care, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Masculinity Unmasked podcast. We're so glad you're here. If this episode resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're really feeling the love, we'll be grateful if you could leave us a 5-star rating. It helps more people find the show. Thanks very much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.